Hey there, music lovers. It's 1966 all over again, when a new Chevrolet cost $2,650, gas was just 32 cents a gallon, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was shocking audiences with its raw language. The year when music was changing forever. Forget what mainstream history tells you. These are the tracks that truly defined 1966. The Temptations gave us Ain't Too Proud to Beg in 1966. But few fans realized this track actually marked a crisis point for the group. David Ruffin's escalating ego was creating serious tension, and producer Norman Whitfield was deliberately brought in to replace Smokey Robinson in a power move by Motown executives. The group formed in Detroit in 1960, combining members from two lesser-known groups, the Primes and the Distants. Despite their polished image, backstage fighting was becoming the norm by '66. Interestingly, this song was one of the few Temptations hits where the backing track was recorded before the vocals, completely backwards from the usual Motown procedure. Contrary to popular belief, For What It's Worth isn't actually a Vietnam protest song. Buffalo Springfield wrote it about the Sunset Strip curfew riots, when young people clashed with police over a 10 p.m. curfew targeting the Strip's thriving club scene. The band formed in 1966 in Los Angeles, when Canadian musicians Neil Young and Bruce Palmer met Stephen Stills while stuck in traffic. Their rise was meteoric but brief. By 1968, they'd split. The song's iconic sound came from Stephen Stills' unique guitar technique of muting the strings with paper inserts. This accidental discovery created the distinctive muted bass line that makes the track immediately recognizable. Good Lovin' topped the charts for the Young Rascals, but record executives initially dismissed it as too raw and unpolished. The band formed in 1965 in New Jersey, and they actually had to fight their label to release this track. Atlantic Records wanted a more commercial sound, but the band insisted on keeping their gritty edge. What most don't know is that this was actually a cover. The original by the Olympics from 1965 was barely noticed. The Rascals version changed the arrangement completely, adding those iconic organ riffs and a faster tempo. Felix Cavaliere later admitted that they learned the song after hearing it played by a local Washington, D.C. band, not from the original recording. Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels crashed onto the music scene with Devil with a Blue Dress On. But the Detroit music establishment initially rejected them for being too black-sounding for white audiences. The group formed in 1964, and they deliberately cultivated a rougher sound than Motown's polished productions. Producer Bob Crew actually spliced two different songs together to create this hit, combining Devil with a Blue Dress On with Good Golly Miss Molly in what was a revolutionary production technique for the time. What's rarely mentioned is that several Detroit session musicians refused to work with the group, claiming their sound was distasteful and would never sell. Hey folks, are you enjoying this musical journey through 1966? I know these songs bring back memories for many of you. Share your stories in the comments below. And if you're digging this deep dive into music history, hit that like button and subscribe to catch our entire series on the greatest music years in history. Now, let's keep the needle on the record with more 1966 classics. Wilson Pickett's Land of a Thousand Dances became a soul standard, but Pickett himself nearly walked out during the recording session. The legendary singer formed his first group, the Falcons, in the late 1950s before going solo in 1963. This track was recorded at the famous Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, a white-owned studio in the deeply segregated South with a primarily white house band. Tensions were high during sessions, with Pickett's aggressive personality clashing with the studio musicians. Few know that the iconic "na na 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 na" vocal hook wasn't even in Pickett's original plan. It was a spontaneous addition after he forgot the lyrics to the verse during recording. Lee Dorsey gave us Working in the Coal Mine while actually working as an auto body repairman. He never gave up his day job despite his musical success. Dorsey began singing in the early 1960s after leaving his career as a professional boxer. The song was written by Alan Toussaint, who deliberately created the clanging, mechanical sounds to mimic the industrial environment of real mines. What most people don't realize is that Dorsey's record label thought the song was too depressing and almost didn't release it. The irony is that this song is about grueling labor became a hit while Dorsey continued working at his auto body shop between tours. The Beatles released Paperback Writer. When internal tensions were already building within the world's biggest band. Formed in Liverpool in 1960, by 1966, they were tired of screaming fans and formulaic pop. This song marked their shift toward more complex compositions and recording techniques. Few listeners realize Paul McCartney wrote it after an aunt challenged him to write something other than love songs. The band was also experimenting heavily with cannabis during this period, significantly changing their creative approach. The distinctive bass sound came from a speaker being turned into a microphone, placed directly against Paul's bass amp, a technique that engineers initially protested as unprofessional. Walk Away Renee by the Left Banke was literally written about the bassist's girlfriend, who was in the studio watching while the keyboardist, who had a crush on her, had to record the song. The band formed in New York in 1965 and was among the first to blend classical elements with rock in what would later be called Baroque pop. The string arrangement that makes the song so distinctive was almost eliminated by producers who thought it was too unusual for commercial radio. The band's 16-year-old keyboardist, Michael Brown, who wrote the song, was so nervous performing it in front of the real Renee that they needed 50 takes to get the recording right. Bobby Hebb wrote Sonny in the hours after his brother was murdered.
Sonny, you smiled at me and really eased the pain.
And following JFK's assassination. Not exactly the uplifting origin you'd expect for such a seemingly cheerful song. Hebb began performing as a child in the 1940s, even appearing on the Grand Ole Opry. What's rarely discussed is that Hebb, an African-American artist, started in country and western music before moving to pop and R&B. The song was written in just 20 minutes as Hebb's response to overwhelming darkness. He deliberately tried to focus on a more positive outlook. Despite its massive success and being covered over 500 times, Hebb never had another major hit, and was often treated as a one-hit wonder by the industry that profited enormously from his composition. Cher's haunting Bang Bang was actually written by her then-husband, Sonny Bono. The same man who would later control and profit from her career while limiting her creative freedom. Cher began her career in 1963 as a session singer, often uncredited on Phil Spector recordings. This song showcased her distinctive vocal quality that many executives had previously criticized as too masculine and unmarketable. What many don't know is that Sonny took complete control of Cher's finances during this period, putting her on a strict allowance despite her success. The song's dark lyrics about romantic manipulation take on a disturbing parallel to their actual relationship, which Cher would later describe as controlling and oppressive. Simon and Garfunkel scored a hit with Homeward Bound.
Homeward bound, I wish I was homeward.
Though Paul Simon actually wrote it in a railway station in England while feeling homesick for a girlfriend in America. The duo formed their partnership in 1963 after earlier performing as Tom and Jerry. This song was created during Simon's obscure period as a solo folk performer in the UK, where he was playing small clubs to indifferent audiences. Columbia Records initially had little faith in the duo, and after their first album flopped, they were nearly dropped from the label. The song's seeming nostalgia for home ironically comes from an artist who is constantly restless. Simon would later admit he never truly felt at home anywhere, despite writing one of the most famous songs about the concept. I Am a Rock became an isolation anthem for Simon and Garfunkel.
I am alone, gazing from my window.
Though Paul Simon later admitted he came to hate performing it. The song's celebration of emotional detachment was embraced by fans as profound, but Simon eventually saw it as immature. What's rarely discussed is that Columbia Records marketed the duo as a safe, clean-cut alternative to rock music for concerned parents, despite the often dark, complex themes in their lyrics. This song topped the charts, while the duo was actually considering splitting up due to artistic differences. Art Garfunkel was simultaneously pursuing an acting career, creating tension about his commitment to the partnership, an early sign of the conflicts that would eventually end their collaboration. The Beach Boys created God Only Knows.
God only knows what I'd do without you.
When Brian Wilson was already deep into his struggles with mental health issues and drug use. The group formed in Hawthorne, California in 1961, initially trading on simple surf music themes. By 1966, Wilson was pushing the band into more complex territory, despite resistance from other members in their record label. The song was revolutionary for mentioning God in the title, something previously avoided in pop music for fear of controversy. The French horn that gives the song its distinctive sound was actually a last-minute addition after Wilson heard it on a classical station while driving to the studio. Wilson's father, Murray, told him the song was a waste of time when he first heard it. How wrong he was. Red Rubber Ball launched the Cyrkle to fame, but few realize Paul Simon wrote it while struggling financially, selling the rights for just $100. The band formed in 1961 as the Rondells at Lafayette College in Pennsylvania. They were actually named by John Lennon, who suggested the unique spelling of Cyrkle after Brian Epstein became their manager. Despite having Beatles connections and a #2 hit, the music industry chewed them up and spat them out. They dissolved by 1968 after their follow-up singles unperformed. What's not widely known is that band member Tom Dawes later wrote the famous Plop Plop Fizz Fizz Alka-Seltzer jingle, which likely earned him more than all the Cyrkle's music combined. Tommy James and the Shondells hit #1 with Hanky Panky. Though the song was actually recorded in 1963, and they had broken up by the time it became popular in 1966. James formed the original Shondells in Niles, Michigan in 1959 when he was just 12 years old. The song was initially released on a small regional label and forgotten until a DJ in Pittsburgh started playing it. When it became a local hit there, James had to quickly form an entirely new band, hiring local musicians he'd never met before to capitalize on the surprise success. What's truly shocking is that their label, Roulette Records, was allegedly controlled by organized crime figures who pocketed most of their earnings. James later claimed he was told at gunpoint which songs would be singles. I'm curious, which of these 1966 classics still finds its way onto your playlist today? If you're enjoying these untold tales behind the hits, take a second to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. Your support helps keep music history alive. The real stories, not just the sanitized versions you've heard before. Share this video with a friend who appreciates authentic music history. Now, let's dive into more tracks that made 1966 unforgettable. Eleanor Rigby showcased the Beatles' artistic evolution, though Paul McCartney didn't actually play any instruments on the recording. It was just his voice, backed by a string octet. The dramatic shift from their early love songs shocked many traditional fans, with some religious groups accusing them of mocking the church with the song's bleak portrayal of a lonely church cleaner. The name Eleanor Rigby was partially inspired by an actress McCartney knew and partially by a headstone he spotted in a churchyard, though he later claimed he didn't consciously realize this until years later. Producer George Martin arranged the strings to deliberately evoke Bernard Herrmann's psycho-thriller film scores, creating an unsettling backdrop that many radio programmers found disturbing. The Happening scored with See You in September. Though it was actually a cover of a 1962 song that had previously flopped for the tempos. The group formed in Paterson, New Jersey in 1961 and initially performed as the Four Graduates. What's surprising is that this seemingly innocent song was nearly banned by some radio stations that interpreted it as relating to military deployment to Vietnam. The Happenings label deliberately marketed them as a safe alternative to British invasion bands, targeting conservative parents who disapproved of long-haired rockers. Despite multiple hits, the band was paid so poorly under their record contract that several members had to work side jobs even during the height of their success. Black is Black made Los Bravos. The first Spanish group to have an international hit, but their German lead singer, Mike Kogel, couldn't actually speak Spanish and communicated with his bandmates through an interpreter. The band formed in Madrid in 1965, combining members from two Spanish groups. The record was revolutionary for the time, blending European pop with American R&B influences. What few realize is that their record label deliberately concealed the band's Spanish identity in marketing materials for the American and British markets, fearing xenophobia would limit their success. Tragically, Kogel's fiancée committed suicide shortly before the song became a hit, giving the lyrics about depression a disturbing personal context. Count 5 created the garage rock classic Psychotic Reaction while they were still in high school, and their name was a deliberate attempt to sound like a cooler version of the Dave Clark 5. The band formed in San Jose, California in 1964, consisting of 5 teenage friends. The song title came from a friend who was studying psychology and described their music as sounding like a psychotic reaction. Record executives initially rejected the song as too raw and unpolished, calling the feedback-laden middle section unlistenable noise. Despite the song's success and enduring influence on punk rock, the band members' parents insisted they attend college rather than tour extensively, effectively killing their momentum and leading to their breakup by 1969. The Yardbirds released Over Under Sideways Down during a period when they had 3 of rock's greatest guitarists pass through their lineup: Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page. The band formed in London in 1963 and became known for their rave-up instrumental passages that would influence countless rock bands. This track featured Jeff Beck's innovative guitar work, though he reportedly hated the song's commercial arrangement. The title was deliberately nonsensical, a reflection of the band's frustration with their manager's demands for hit singles. Despite their massive influence on rock music, internal tensions were already destroying the band. Beck would smash his guitar on stage when equipment malfunctioned and was fired during their U.S. tour shortly after the song's release. And there you have it, 20 tracks that truly define 1966. Songs that changed music forever while their creators often struggled behind the scenes. The music industry wasn't always kind to the artists we love. Remember, in 1966, the average family income was just $6,900. A movie ticket cost 75 cents, and these musicians were creating timeless art while fighting battles we're only now beginning to understand. If you enjoyed this unvarnished look at the music history, subscribe for more volumes in our series. The real stories deserve to be told.